Now all of a sudden you speak different. And when you speak different, you attract different. And when you attract different, you end up with better people in your business and in your organization. So I am constantly focusing on trying to improve the way that our people think, because if I can shift their thinking, I can shift their entire life and their entire business. Welcome back to the Leaders Only podcast, where we talk about business, leadership, mindset, and just pretty much anything revolved around building an incredible life. You know, one of the reasons that I started this podcast is because I felt like on the way to where we're at now, there wasn't really a place to go to learn tangible skills that are needed in order to succeed and further yourself and just get better overall in every area of your life. And so some background about me, I built a sales company that does over 8 figures a year. I own over $10 million worth of real estate, and I've built a multiple 7-figure income that's streamlined and in all honesty doesn't really need me. I plan on teaching you and documenting everything that I learned along the way. And if you get something out of today's message, if you can do me a favor, if you can like, share, and subscribe, it will give us the ability to further our message and help more people, which is what we're all about. Thank you guys so much. Let's dive in. And so today we're going to be talking about how to grow and scale a recruiting business, whether that's in the insurance and financial space, whether it's the solar space, or even the multi-level marketing space. I'm going to be going over 3 areas of focus that you have to have if you want to scale the business. So one of the reasons that I broke things down into 3 simple focuses is because I felt like for me, coming up in not only the multi-level marketing space, but also the financial and insurance space, I felt like there was so much chaos when it came to training and developing other people. And I also felt like there was so much chaos when it came to scaling the business. I was supposed to be focused on my personal sales. I was supposed to be focused on adding new agents to my organization. I was supposed to be focused on developing new agents. I was supposed to be focused on hitting certain milestones. I just felt like there was so much chaos and there wasn't a step-by-step action plan on what to do in order to actually succeed and scale. And so for me, the reason I created it and broke it down into 3 different focuses was to honestly just dumb it down for me so that way I can get obsessive without having to think about 10 to 15 different things. Because one of the things that I realized is that when I was spinning one plate, another plate was falling. So all of a sudden I'm spinning a personal sales plate, and by the time I got the personal sales plate spinning, the agent training was hitting the ground, or the development of somebody was falling off, whatever it might be. I felt like one plate was shattering as I got another plate spinning. And so I wanted to remove that, and I wanted to systemize the scaling and growth process, which is what I'm going to be going over with you today. So let's talk about what these 3 areas of focus are. The first one is recruiting volume, which is the process of finding new talent, new skill, and helping them go from a potential prospect to a trainee and or an individual that just partnered with the firm. The second thing that we need to be focused on is an extremely tight system that helps that brand new trainee go from trainee to independent, which is someone who could do things all on their own, distribute product on their own, run recruiting and sales presentations on their own. We need to have a systemized process that helps people go from trainee to independent. And then the third area of focus needs to be leadership development, where we help people go from independent to a leader that can run their own business, their own show, and do things all on their own, so that way the business can actually scale. Because the only way to truly scale a business is to have more people in a leadership role. That's the only way to truly scale a business, because there's no way for you to lead 100 people all on your own. But you can lead 10 that lead 10, which means we need to get more people in that leadership role because it's the only way to scale. And so the reason these 3 areas of focus is so important is because it's almost like a funnel, right? There's a recruiting funnel that helps people go from potentially interested in the business to partnering with the business. And then there's the funnel that helps people go from partnering with the business and becoming an agent and or a trainee to becoming independent, being able to do things on their own. And then there's a funnel that helps all these people go from independent to being a leader, being able to run their own show, their own business, their own company within and or on the platform. So I'm going to go over some things that you can do to streamline these focuses and make it a lot easier for you to scale the business, duplicate yourself, and build a business that you can't stop even if you wanted it to. And that's the goal, right? Because everyone wants to get to a point where they can stop, but their business doesn't. Everyone wants to get to a point where they can stop distributing product, but their business doesn't. And everyone wants to get to a point where they can stop, but their cash flow doesn't. And so these 3 areas of focus, if done properly and if done systematically, can lead to you never having to work again unless you want to, which is why they're there in the first place. So let's talk about the first area of focus, which is recruiting volume. Because obviously we want an influx of potential prospects, an influx of people who would potentially be interested in partnering with our firm. Well, the only way to do this is to make things simple, duplicatable, and scripted. And so I just want you to know that recruiting is one of those things that can be learned by anyone. It's not about how tall you are. It's not about your age, your gender, your ethnicity. None of that matters when it comes to being a good recruiter. The only thing that matters is, are you willing to learn the words? Because think about it. What is the recruiting process? I say some words that makes you think, I'd be interested in setting up an interview. And then in that interview, you say some more words that makes them think, I want to join or I want to get involved. And so if we can just master the words, say those words to enough people, then it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when you get results. Because like I said, if you say the right words and you say it to enough people, you will succeed. So it's just a matter of dialing in the words. So what can we do to streamline the recruiting volume process? Script everything. And so one of the things that I always did for our business is I scripted 15 different strategies in order to recruit, get prospects, and potentially turn those prospects into new agents and or trainees with the business and or platform. And so if I can encourage you to do something, it would be to script everything. Make sure everything's word for word. Don't miss a single bullet point and don't leave anything out. Don't leave anything to the imagination. The more you leave to the imagination, the easier it's going to be for your agent to fail and not succeed. So what I want to do is I want to script everything word for word, and I want to keep human nature in mind. And I also want to make sure that it sounds organic and natural. A lot of times I see people create sales scripts and or prospecting scripts, and they're so unnatural, it almost feels awkward for me to listen to. Not even almost feels awkward. It does feel awkward for me to listen to. So I try to avoid that. I want it to be natural. I want it to be organic. I want it to feel like it's a legitimate conversation and or a legitimate process. And if there's anything that's weird about it, I want to make sure that it's built into the script to overcome the weirdness, so that way it becomes less weird. And so once again, one of the things that we've done is we've created 15 step-by-step recruiting processes that makes it easy for anyone to take it, apply it, and go get a result. Another thing we have to pay attention to when it comes to increasing recruiting volume is pay attention to the ratios. Because if you pay attention to the ratios, you can mathematically guarantee your success. And let me explain what I mean. If you know for every 10 approaching contacts, you get one new business partner, or for every 20 approaching contacts, you get 5 new recruits, whatever it might be. If you know the ratios, now you can mathematically guarantee your results every single month. Because let's say it's 10 to 1. For every 10 approaching contacts, I get 1 guaranteed new recruit into my business. That means that if I approach 50 people, I'm going to get 5 new business partners. Or if I approach 100 people, I'm going to get 10 new business partners. And so I like to pay attention to the ratios of each one of those 15 scripts, so that way people know what numbers they have to run in order to expect a result. Because like I said, we have to make it mathematical. We have to make it easy to understand. We have to make it clear, or else people will run 5 and then they wonder, why didn't I get a result? Or they'll run 3 and they're like, why didn't I get a result? You just haven't lived up to the ratio just yet. So as long as you live up to the ratio, once again, it's guaranteed that you're going to get a result. It's just a matter of time. And so I would highly encourage you to pay attention to the ratio of each recruiting strategy that you have. And then last but not least, make sure that people are aware of these ratios. Because if they're not aware of these ratios, then once again, they're going to send out 3 messages and they're going to wonder why they didn't get a result, and they're going to get discouraged. And so one of the things that we're very big on is making sure that people are aware of the numbers, because the numbers are the numbers. People are very predictable in large numbers. So we try to make sure that all of our new agents and or our trainees are always aware of what the ratios actually are, so that way they don't get discouraged by the results they didn't get from the work that they did not do. We want to make sure that they know exactly how many numbers they have to run in order to generate a result, and we obsess over them knowing that. So the second area of focus that we have to have is obsessing over an extremely tight system. You know, we've all heard before that you don't run a business, you run a system, and the system runs the business. And so the point of a system in a recruiting space is to help people go from trainee and or someone who just partnered with the firm to independent, being able to do things all on their own. So that is the number one goal of the system. So once again, we have recruiting volume that pumps people into the system. And then the system's goal is to help people go from trainee to independent. That is the sole purpose of the system. So what are some things that you can do to simplify your system process when it comes to helping somebody go from dependent to independent? So the first thing that I'd recommend, and I'm going to call it A, is make everything step by step, to the point that there is no confusion on what the next step should be. You know, for me, I'm all about removing thinking. And if you paid attention to my social media or my podcast, you'll hear me say that all the time. Remove thinking, because the more people have to think about, the more they slow down. If I have to think about what am I going to do next, that's delaying my execution. If I have to think about what's the next step, then that's delaying my execution. If I have to think about what skills do I need to have, or what information do I need to have, or what tools do I need to have to get a result, then guess what? That is delaying my execution. So I try to remove that at all costs. So make everything step by step. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, so everyone always knows what they should be doing next. B, understand that clarity is king. Think about it like this. If you were driving and it was super foggy, it was raining, it was cloudy, whatever it might be, are you going to speed up in an environment like that? Or are you going to slow down in an environment like that? Obviously, you're going to slow down because you can't see what's ahead of you. And if you can't see what's ahead of you, naturally, your mind has this built into it to keep you safe. And so you're going to slow down in order to stay safe. But in business, that's horrible. Slowing down is horrible in business. Speed is the name of the game, which means that we need to make things as clear as humanly possible. Because if you're driving and it's a sunny day like how it is normally in San Diego, what are you going to do? You're going to accelerate a lot faster because you can see what's ahead of you. You can see that car that's a mile ahead of you or whatever it might be because you have so much clarity that you know what obstacles are either there and or not there at all, which gives you the ability to accelerate and move faster. So I just want you to think crystal clear. How do I make everything crystal clear in our business? The scripts to use, the words to say, the steps to follow, the processes. How do I make everything crystal clear so I can remove thinking as much as I possibly can? Last but not least, we have to make sure that we understand that not every single person is going to be a runner, and that's okay. One of the biggest mistakes that I see people make in leadership and or any type of recruiting business and or any type of recruiting model is they just expect everyone to be a sprinter. They expect everyone to be a runner, and that is just not the case. And the reason they try to make everyone a runner is typically because they don't have a lot of recruiting volume. And so their only opportunity to earn income, as unfortunate as this is to try to get this person to move fast. But when you're trying to get someone who needs to move slow to move fast, guess what happens? You lose them, which is why recruiting businesses have such bad turnaround. They don't allow people to go at their own pace. So one thing that I'm very, very big on when it comes to teaching people how to scale a recruiting business is understand that everyone needs to go at their own pace. Yes, we do need to try to get them to go a little bit faster. Yes, we still need to lead them and try to challenge them a little bit, but not to the extent in which we lose them. Because when you are constantly pushing people and challenging people and trying to make people go faster than they are capable of at that moment, what ends up happening is you end up recruiting to replace rather than recruiting to retain. So let me tell you a quick story. There's a woman that I recruited into my financial and insurance business years and years ago. And when she got recruited into the company, she was about 2 months from having a baby. There was a lot going on in her life. She had just left another company to go on maternity leave before having that baby. And there was just so many different moving parts in her life. And so when she partnered with us, one of the things that she told me up front, she said, Matt, I'm not going to be able to do this very quickly. I'm going to have to go at my own pace, at my own speed. And because of my maturity level in business at that time, I was okay with it. And so when I told her, I said, hey, listen, I have no problem with you going slower, but can you at least communicate with me so that way we can try to get you through the process as fast as we possibly can? She said, absolutely. I said, so if you need to go slower, move slower. And if you want to speed up, because I'm not just going to know randomly that you're ready to speed up. So communicate that with me. And so by me doing this, it took her longer than everyone else to get a license in the industry at the time. It took her about 5 to 6 months just to complete her training because she had the baby. There's all these different moving parts. But what's crazy is that woman went on to be one of the biggest producers in the organization at the time because we just allowed her to start at her own pace. It's not that she wasn't a winner. It's not that she wasn't a champion at heart. It's not that she didn't have a burning desire to do something great with her life. She just had a newborn baby that was about to be born any day. And so what I thought to myself is I was like, imagine if I didn't have the business maturity to say this woman just needs to move at her own pace right now. There's nothing wrong with moving at a level 2, even though there's other people moving at a level 8. What if I didn't have the business maturity? We would have probably lost her because I probably would have over-challenged her, overwhelmed her, and pushed her to a point where she just said, you know what, I don't want to be involved at all. But because I was willing to be patient with her, she stayed in the business long term. And guess what? Now she's actually thriving in that business, doing absolutely incredible. And I couldn't be more proud. But it was because I was willing to be patient. We also have people on the other side that are willing to sprint out the gate. That's okay too. My point is you have to know your audience. You have to know who it is that you're working with. And so one of the things that I always like to do when training and or working with somebody that's brand new, I say, hey, listen, when someone partners with our firm, we have people who want to walk and go at a slower pace. We have people who want to jog, and then we have people that want to sprint. And at any point in time, you can go from a walker to a jogger and a jogger to a sprinter. And if you're ever at a point in your life where you're sprinting and you need to step back to jog and or walk because something popped up or an emergency happened or whatever it is, just communicate that with me. I will run with you no matter what, and or I will walk with you no matter what, but I need you to communicate that with me. And by you doing this, not only do you see what pace you should move at with them, but it also opens the door for dialogue and communication. So that way they don't just quit because they're overwhelmed. Because how many times do you have people quit in a recruiting business just because of the fact that they were overwhelmed? And instead of telling you, hey, I'm overwhelmed, can I slow down? They just left altogether without any communication, without any dialogue. That's a horrible thing. That means as a leader, you failed. You got to make sure that people always feel comfortable enough to communicate with you when they need to go slower, when they need to slow down a little bit, when they need a breather, whatever it might be. People need to feel comfortable enough with you that they can communicate that and not feel judged and or not feel like a horrible person for not being this high achiever, which is what all these recruiting businesses preach. Now, I'm not saying don't look for people who want to move fast, but what I am saying is you have to allow people to work at their own pace. Try to help them speed it up. Try to help them move a little bit faster. Try to help them succeed quicker, but don't push them out in the process. And I promise you, you're going to improve and increase your retention. And why is this so important? Because the more people you retain, the more people you help go from dependent to independent, which leads me to step and or area of focus number 3, leadership development, which is the process of helping somebody go from independent to a leader in your organization that can run their own show, lead their own team, run their own business, and do things completely without you. You know, my definition of a leader is someone who no longer needs me. That's my goal. My number one goal all the time is to train as many people as I possibly can to become as good, if not better than me. Because if you are as good and or better than me, that means that you no longer need me. And if you no longer need me, that truly gives us the ability to scale, because at that rate, we can start to multiply versus just add and or add and or add. I want to try to multiply the growth versus just add to the growth. And that's what it's all about. And so how do we do this? How do we increase leadership development? So once again, we have high recruiting volume, which is the process of helping a prospect become a trainee. Then we have the system, which helps people go from trainee to independent. And then we have leadership development that helps people go from independent to a leader that can do everything on their own. So what are some things that we can do to increase and improve the amount of people taking ownership and also leading, doing things all on their own? Let's talk about it. So what are some things that we can do to improve leadership development? The first thing is understand what it is that you're looking for. For me, I'm constantly looking for what it is that I call the it factor, which is A, somebody who has influence, meaning people listen to them. B, they're hungry to grow and learn. They want to get better, because you have people who are influential, but they have a level of cockiness or arrogance to them where they're not willing to grow and or listen and or try to get better. I want that person that's hungry to learn, hungry to get better, hungry to be coached on how to become more successful. C is the work ethic, because you can have all the ambition in the world and you can be extremely influential, but if you don't have the work ethic to go do what's required in order to grow the business, then it's going to be difficult for you to succeed. And then last but not least, I look for mental toughness, because you can be influential, you can have an incredible work ethic, you can be hungry to learn and grow, but if everything throws you off, every time your goldfish drowns, you're out for a week, or every time adversity pops up, it stumps you for a month or whatever it is, well then guess what? That's going to affect your ability to scale and grow. So what I'm constantly looking for is those 4 things. So once again, influence, hunger to grow and get better, a work ethic, and the mental toughness and capacity to endure even through the pain. That's what I'm constantly looking for. And it makes it a lot easier to find people with those qualities when you're running the high recruiting volume, which is why these are the 3 areas of focus that you have to have when scaling the business. Because if you don't have volume, then guess what? You're not going to find people like this very often. And if you do find people like this, well, then guess what? They're not going to probably stay because there's no one else like them in the environment. What I'm constantly trying to do is dump tons of volume into the business so that way I can find a whole bunch of people like that all at the same time. And then a lot of times they're typically competitive, and then I can utilize that competitive drive to help all of them elevate, all of them get to the next level, and all of them better their life. So why is this so important? Because it's a lot easier to find leaders than it is to develop leaders. And I'm not saying don't spend time trying to develop leaders. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is it's a lot easier to scale, and you will scale quicker if you find them versus always try to develop them. And the reason most people only focus on trying to develop everyone is because they don't have enough volume coming in to find them. And so for me, once again, I'm all about pumping that volume in so we can find those leaders. And then what we do is we create an environment and a culture where people who are not quite leaders yet can develop themselves in. And then once they become that leader, we help them go from potential leader to the leader column. And once again, that's where we help them develop, take ownership, and become that person that can run things all on their own. And so we have to be thinking with that mentality. I'm going to run high volume to find leaders so I don't have to spend the next 5-10 years trying to only develop them, because it will make it a lot easier to scale if you focus on finding them. The second part of that is once you find them, like I talked about a second ago, identify and separate them. Teach them the how, teach them the why, teach them the strategy, teach them how to play the game of business chess. That is so important, because a lot of people are just running around like a chicken with their head cut off with no definite purpose and or definite strategy. And business is all strategy. Business is a game of chess. So after we identify and separate those leaders, we want to start teaching them the business strategy so that way they can build a successful business all on their own. The third thing that I want to do, and I'm doing this the entire time, by the way, but it's I really want to help them develop their thinking. That's first and foremost number one, because the leader's number one job is to change the way that people think. Because if the thought processes that they already had were working, they would be more successful and or they would have a bigger business and or team. So obviously there's something about their thinking that's keeping them from growing to the rate in which they could. So for me, the number one thing that I'm always trying to do is help people improve the way that they think, because I know whatever they think about, they speak about, whatever they speak about, they attract. And the reason they attract it is because whatever you speak about, you tend to attract people into your business that believe in what you're speaking about. Hopefully that makes sense. So once again, let me clarify that for you. You think something and you believe something, and whatever you think about and you believe, you tend to speak. And when you speak something, those who agree will stay and those who disagree will leave. So if I can improve the way you think and if I can improve what you believe, now all of a sudden you speak different. And when you speak different, you attract different. And when you attract different, you end up with better people in your business and in your organization. So I am constantly focusing on trying to improve the way that our people think, because if I can shift their thinking, I can shift their entire life and their entire business. And last but not least, it's understanding what we consider to be a leader. And a leader in our book is someone who can do all three: pump recruiting volume in, run a tight system, and develop a leader. So once again, a leader is somebody who can develop another leader. So I don't consider somebody a true leader in a business unless they've duplicated themselves and helped somebody become as successful, if not more successful than them. If they have not yet done that, then in my book, they have not fully stepped into that leadership role, which means my hand needs to be on it and I need to be involved when it comes to still helping them grow and helping them scale. Once again, it doesn't matter if you're in the multi-level marketing space, if you're in the financial and insurance space, if you're in the solar space, if we can systemize these three areas, the recruiting volume, the system itself, and then leadership development, it's going to make it a heck of a lot easier to scale and grow. So please dial in these three areas, get good. Because one thing that I'm sick and tired of is people giving certain industries a bad rep because they don't have these processes dialed in. It drives me insane. The financial and insurance space is not a bad space, but it is if you're not working with somebody who has your best intentions and can actually teach you to succeed. The multi-level marketing space is not a bad space, but it is if somebody's making false promises that they can't deliver on because they don't have the processes in place. Heck, solar is not a bad space, but it becomes a bad space if people make commitments that they can help someone succeed, but they don't have the processes to help them succeed. And I'm tired of the certain industries having a bad rep just because they are struggling with leadership within those industries. So let's dial these things in. Let's get really, really good at it so that way we can recruit and retain and develop versus recruiting to replace, which is what most people in these spaces are doing. And so once again, guys, if you guys got something out of today's message, if you can like, share, and subscribe, that would mean the absolute world to me. Obviously, we put out all this information for free, and I know a lot of people can really benefit from the information that we put out. And so if you guys can share it, like, comment, the whole 9 yards, it would mean the world to us. So thank you guys again, and we'll see you guys next week.